Finals is a unique part of the A-League that provides do-or-die attention to high-stake matches of football. So why are we taking a pause from the cutthroat nature of finals football this weekend for the first of a two-legged affair? Auckland and City are making their dramatic entry into finals, but no one will progress, no one will be eliminated. And in the case of Western United and City, they'll go back to the exact same stadium next Saturday night for another 90 minutes. This isn't quite a cup competition where two legs are popular and necessary. We're not drawing names out of a hat. A-League teams have earned the right in the regular season for preferential treatment, and fans shouldn't be guaranteed to see their team at home if they haven't earned it. Keep that in mind as we preview both semi-finals coming up at Amy Park this weekend. Elsewhere, ticketing controversy as club members are given the short straw. Ufuk Tale's new deal at Sydney FC is confirmed. Perth and Wellington progress in the Australia Cup. And is Craig Goodwin on his way back to Adelaide United on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me tonight is Jacob Stevens, decked out in his new Round Ball Australia home kit. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Enjoying the new shirt. Looks great. It's awesome in person. And yeah, we decided all to wear it tonight. We'll be matching. I think it's a good look. So yeah, doing well.
Yep, full kit W's we are today by the sound of it. Although I'm not sure if the over the jumper go Christian Montegan is kind of what this shirt was made for, but it is a very cold evening here in Melbourne.
It is, but at least you can see it, right? I mean, you've got yours covered with the jacket, so
where's the dedication?
What's going on?
No, fair enough. Anyway, they're starting to. I'm pretty sure everyone pretty much has got them by now, so we hope you're enjoying them. It's cool to see some messages come through saying that their Ramble kit has arrived. But of course, we're here to talk A-League football, and we're going to kick off today's show with a bit of a gripe. I was trying to figure out which episode in this kind of semi-final stint over the next fortnight where we should slot it in, and I've just kind of gone hell for leather here. I'm of the opinion, guys, that two-legged semi-finals shouldn't really be a part of the A-League, and I went through a few reasons why, obviously, in that intro, but just to get it down to some bullet points for you, and I'll let you take a swing at them either way. I think there are better ways to reward the higher placing teams when obviously the A-League have experimented with lots of different finals structures over the years. When this particular structure, the 6-team two-legged semis, was brought in by Greg O'Rourke, who was the A-League's boss in 2021 when this format was introduced, he said that the new format rewards the sides that finish first and second by eliminating the one-off semi-finals that were there at the time, and it rewards the fans who we know loves finals football. I just think there are better ways to go about rewarding those teams, and it doesn't really feel like true finals football, Jacob, because of the fact that it's not that cutthroat. It's not that do-or-die occasion because everyone knows you have to go back next weekend for another 90 minutes. I think other couple of detractors from it is that the best teams, and obviously then the most popular teams usually throughout the season, don't play at week one. So we don't get that kind of build up of momentum. All of a sudden, coming into week two, and even being the first leg of the semi-final doesn't have that kind of gravitas behind it of a finals match. And then it just kind of takes the sting out of the momentum of the final series. And I don't think we need this parity as well, as I mentioned, of having, play your home leg and your away leg in two different 90-minute sections. I think the teams that have finished higher on the table, just like in the elimination finals, they've deserved the right to play the game at home, and we don't need to go back and forth. That's my arguments for it.
It's the thing that really, I suppose, is the big detractor for me is that we've sort of lost a little bit of that intensity from the semi-final games. I mean, you ask anybody with like the most iconic semi-final games, and it's all the one-leggers that have happened, right? Name a single memorable moment from the double-legged semi-finals that we've had. It doesn't feel like it quite has that same.
I can give you one, but all of them are going to be second legs. It's like Oscar Zavada scoring in extra time in the second leg, right, to take it to extra time. That's
but
what
it's like before that, you've had some iconic ones. The Wanderers Brisbane game 5-4. The Adelaide Perth penalty shootout game.
Terry
you had
Antonis, villain to hero.
Terry Antonis, you had the Riley McGree scorpion kick in the semi-final against City. Like, it's just, you've had all these moments with the single legs because it's do or die, and there is no chance to sort of come back. And I don't think we get to see a team really sort of overturn a big deficit to sit in a second leg of a semi-final. Yeah, okay, it's only been a few years of it, but it just sort of feels like for the most part, the first leg has been quite stale, and it's then all happened in the second leg, or it's like, well, that would have happened anyway if we just had the one leg, you know? So it does, so I can kind of get behind that, but I also just like that it's not that you're necessarily rewarding the higher placed teams, but you're rewarding those who make it through the elimination final as well by giving them a chance to have another home final. I kind of like and appreciate that, and I think that gives it something, something extra. It's one last chance for those fans to see their team play at home potentially, for the season. That sort of sentimentality to it is quite nice as well. And I suppose when you look at some of the biggest competitions around the world, you see those double-legged semi-finals and you go, it just kind of makes sense. But I don't know. Coming into this, I thought I was going to disagree with you massively, Lockie, and think, no, that's a stupid idea. But now that I think about it, I'm not sure that it's quite had the intended effect of making things more exciting. I think it has kind of drawn the process out a little bit. And we've seen some rather laboured performances in these semi-finals because it's been played over two legs. I don't know. It's an interesting discussion to have. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I like it because it gives both teams a home final. I think that's cool. But then, it does take away a little bit from the excitement of it all.
That is the main benefit of it, right, Christian? That, I think this was part of the selling point when they talked about the grand final going to Sydney as well, is that they have the two-leggers in the semis where you get like that last chance to see your team at home. But I would argue if you finish sixth, then, you somehow managed to win an elimination final, or Victory, who finished fifth. Like, you coming up against then top, do you deserve to play at home again in the final series?
Personally, I've never had any problems with it. I mean, look, you're rewarding the better teams at the end of the day with two legs. If you're just going to go by the one game, doesn't it give the team, just say, for example, I don't know, if Adelaide United went through against West United and they play in a semi-final, it's over one game. Like, are you telling me they deserve it just because, they perform well over one 90-minute game? I think the whole point of it is two legs across 180 minutes. It's a test of, endurance. It's not, because anyone can pick out a result, right, in one game. And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's why I love the two-legged affairs. And it sort of brings together the whole picture of the season, right, where you've got to play home and you've got to play away. You've got to travel as well. You've got to do both sides of it. And the thing I'd change for me, and I think you're going to get to it, Lockie, with your proposals, I wouldn't have a 6-team final series because it's just too many teams that you're allowing to have that privilege to play finals. I just think, I don't know, if it was, what's that?
Too many? You're saying 6 out of 13 is too many?
Yeah, I'd
it's almost half the league.
I'd put it down to 4. I'd say 4.
Wow.
Do the top 4 for finals. And to your point that you raised at the end, Lockie, before, you said that there's no momentum for the top 2 teams having that bye in the first week. That's how you do it. You do top 4, first versus fourth, second versus third, do two-legged semi-finals, and from there, a grand final to decide it. I wouldn't see a problem with that either.
So, that's a fascinating suggestion there. See, when I hear you say 4 teams, straight away I think of the women's competition, right, where they've had 4-team final series for ages, and there's been consistently teams like the Sydney FCs and Melbourne Cities that have made it every year, and all of a sudden you're taking, Melbourne Victory's been a very successful club as well. You're taking like 2 or 3 spots automatically away, and then there's just everyone else fighting for 1 or 2, and it doesn't allow for those kind of Cinderella stories as much.
Well, it gives the other teams, more incentive to not try harder, but to, I guess, invest more. They've got to take it a bit more seriously in the sense that they don't have the luxury of depending on 5th and 6th spot, right? It's going to add that competitive edge to it as well, where you're going to see teams in the mid-table range trying to fight for that 4th place, whereas you'll obviously have the bigger teams like the Victories and the Sydneys most seasons vying for those top spots. That'll be expected, but I think it'd make for really entertaining viewing just to have it cut off at the 4th spot. Whereas, you're basically rewarding half the league for finals. Like, does that make sense as well?
Do you not also think that that's like part of like why we have a final series though. Like if you're going to go that far and say we shouldn't reward teams for coming in like 4th, 5th and 6th, then why not just like get rid of finals altogether?
Well, that's the other argument though. Like my argument is, how many teams do you want to reward? For me, I think 4 is a good number. That's just my personal view.
I kind of like that argument as well then, because it's just straight to the point. I mean, if we're going down this road, I mean, do we go just full like Belgian league where we split the table in half at the end of the season, and then it becomes
pretty cool as well.
Then it becomes basically 2 brackets, an upper bracket and a lower bracket, and you have like a Swiss system type thing, you know, where if you lose 3 you're out, if you win 3 you're through, and you know that sort of shenanigans.
We could do that without relegation, because the bottom half would be a complete non-event for 2 months.
Well, no, because the winner of that would go through to the proper playoff stage.
Oh, okay.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, do we just fully embrace going crazy and do something like that? I think that's what the Belgian league do. They take the top half of the league and then they, you know, average their points out or something and then seed them based on that. It's crazy. Yeah, I like it at 6. I do think that it's a lot, but I think that a final series with 4 isn't worth it. And I think I think adding more teams to it would be too many for sure. I think 6 is a sweet spot. Like it's very rare. I mean, this season is an example of it happening, where a team that probably doesn't deserve to be in finals, which is Adelaide, managed to sneak through. But I think that's been pretty rare since the start of the A-League, really, that teams that you feel like probably don't deserve it have made it through.
Well, that's why you want
probably
top
a product
6.
of just playing good, like in the second half of the season. Like if they were horrible in the first half, but then had an awesome recovery, you'd say
everyone would say they did deserve it. That's true. That's true. So I think that, you know, the 6 is definitely, I think, a sweet spot at the moment. I think that expanding it would be rewarding too many teams. And I know that you were saying, Lucky, that that's, you know, the point of finals is that it's, you know, this second thing on top of then the league stage. And I get that. But I also think that you should have to work to be able to get to finals, not just merely existing and not being terrible gets you into it, if that makes sense. Like,
Christian, did you have something?
No, I was just going to say, Jacob, the only reason why he's saying top 6 is because Adelaide is struggling so much. So the more teams, the better, right? But
all
I
right.
mean, go on, Lucky.
Let me throw out my idea, right? Look, I think if we assume that the A-League expands further, because I agree, at the current point, I think it's kind of almost like morally wrong to go more than like 50% of the league. You shouldn't be in the bottom half of the table and qualify for some kind of playoff, really. So I think if we got to 16 teams and then we could have an 8 teams finals series and you just do it like the footy. So you got your top 4, your double chance, your bottom 4 play eliminations, and then the losers and the winners. So, you know, if you win in a top 4 game, you get to skip you know, a week and go straight to a prelim final, right? I think that system works very well. Obviously, Australians know it very well. I know that'll be a controversial statement as well, but it's a system that is well understood, right? And then if you wanted to kind of bring that into a 13 or even a 14 team season, hopefully the year after next, if we get a Canberra expansion, then maybe you keep your top 4. You still play qualifying finals that earn you the right to have the double chance for the top 4. And then maybe you put the 7th team in. So this year would be like a Sydney FC. You play essentially an elimination final or some kind of play-in game against an Adelaide United in 6th. And then like the 5th team has a bye. So you basically just assume that the 5th team beats the 8th team, right? In like a, you know, just so we can have 7 teams instead of 8 and we're not rewarding too many. And then you still have your top 4 for a double chance. Hopefully in a couple of years, we've got 2 spots going into Asia. So that's still a double step up if you want to get top 2 as well. And obviously you're fighting for the premiership. And I think that way you've got all the teams entering in week 1. So the momentum builds. You've got 4 weeks of finals where every 90 minutes means something. You still get your benefit for finishing higher up on the table. And then like someone gets eliminated every week, Jacob. Like we're not just hanging around for, you know, the next week to happen for something to be determined. Something is happening every week.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, is that not kind of, it's different, but it's kind of similar to how I believe the finals series kind of worked in those early days until about I want to say it was like 2008, 2009, something like that.
There was
I
a double
reckon.
chance in there
So
somewhere.
there was a double chance in there, and you had then the prelim final. So if you lost in a semi-final, but you were one of the higher ranked teams, you then dropped into the prelim final and got a second chance anyway. So I think that, yeah, maybe that's the answer, right? It's go back to what we had as a compromise rather than, changing things too dramatically. You don't have to add any more teams. You keep the 6 teams, it keeps it nice and, nice and easy for everybody to understand. But yeah, I don't know. Look, I think that any change to this is going to be met with criticism, as much as it might be supported as well. I think that that's just the nature of these sorts of things. Some people go, well, why are we bothering to change it? Others, we didn't need to change it. It worked fine as it was. Others will say that, well, yeah, it needs changing because at the moment nothing really happens, and it's kind of a bit boring sometimes. I mean, this first leg of the semi-finals, are we really that excited for it? Let's be honest. I mean,
I don't know if I am, Christian.
Yeah, it's like you said, Lockie. It's in your scenario, right? It's like somebody gets eliminated every week, right? There's some sort of tension. There's something, to play for every week. Whereas at the moment, it does kind of feel like, yeah, it comes to a bit of a halt. But I suppose then maybe that idea there is that then builds the tension even more for that second leg. Is that you've had sort of a week where anything can happen, and then you go into the second leg anyway. I don't know. It's strange. I don't know what the solution is, to be honest. I say just keep it as it is because I don't want to have to learn a new system. But yeah.
Christian, final thoughts?
What kind of football fans are you, honestly? To not look forward to a first leg? What are you talking about?
It's not that I don't look to it. But I can do in the
that's what you're basically
the right
saying.
scenario. The right scenario, I can look forward to a first leg. I just feel like sometimes it's just, what are we doing? Like, I feel like the A-League didn't necessarily need...
Look, I can understand it from the point of view of trying to attract new fans, right? Because we know just Australian sports fans in general, they just love a final series, right? That's what, they're attracted to that. And at first they could be like, I'm not really interested. But, for a football purist, it's about, things like tactical battles. How do teams approach in the first leg? And again, like I said before, the travel aspect, like all these different combining factors make the spectacle, right? And then once you get to the 180 minutes, you've got, determined winner, or you've got extra time penalties. I just like the spectacle over the 2 weeks just to see definitively who is the better team, right? Because, more often than not, the better team is going to go through, based off 2 games, right? And that's what you want. You want the most deserving teams playing in the grand final at the end of the day.
Okay. Here's an even bigger compromise. Replays. So it's a single leg knockout, but if it's a draw after extra time, you do a replay at the reverse fixture, like the FA Cup.
Nah, I don't like that. Not in a final series. You know what I've discovered throughout this conversation? I reckon I'm actually less annoyed about double headers. I reckon you have to play your top 2 teams in the first week of finals. You got to get away for, especially Auckland. Like Melbourne City, their support is what it is, right? But you look at a club like Auckland, the journey they've gone on this year, they've already sold 20,000 tickets for the second leg. There is a clear wave of momentum behind that football club. But because they don't play in week 1, they have an away game in week 2 that, means less than every single other game. The whole momentum of their final series doesn't really start until the 3rd week. And then if they win, it's like 7 days to the grand final. So only a week of real momentum behind them. And I just think maybe that's my argument. I want the better teams to play in week 1.
How about this? The first and second place teams play off 1 game to decide who goes into the grand final. And then from there, there's a way in my head where you can go do the elimination finals, knock out the teams, and then you've got 3rd versus 4th, do 1 game there. It's all complicated, but if you want to
that's basically how it used to be.
If you want to keep that consistency flowing, like you're saying, Lockie, so you don't lose that extra something, that's another possibility.
First versus second play week 1. They play week 1 to determine who hosts the grand final. Whoever wins that has hosting rights.
We're really throwing around ideas here. I reckon you do a top 4 with a double chance, and 5 and 6 have the bye. Do that instead. Because like that, instead of Auckland not playing in week 1, Adelaide are not playing in week 1. And you actually get the team that's been well supported playing football.
APL, are you listening?
Or just to have everybody play each other once.
Just 1 to 13.
Everyone plays each other once.
We want to hear what you think as well. What finals format would you bring to the A-League competitions? Let us know in the comment section. Let's get stuck into try and actually previewing the first leg, because it's not going to change by the weekend. So we're going to have to deal with it at least for this season. Let's start with Victory versus Auckland on the Saturday night, Christian. The middle game of the Amy Park trifecta this weekend. And look, Auckland FC, they've been on an interesting journey the last month, right? They won the league, the premiership at home to Perth. Well, they'd already won it before that game, right? But you lift the trophy, you have a bit of a party. Then you go out to Tarneets and you lose to Western United, and then you have a week off. That's not a very traditional and easy and, I guess, regular schedule for them. Surely they're going to find it a little bit difficult to... I know it's a finals game. They're going to be up for it, but that's definitely disruptive.
Yeah, 100%. It's very difficult to find that winning formula, as Auckland have done all season long, and then to lose that game 4-2 against Western, final game of the season, have that week off break as well, and then to expect to play, be pitted into a 2-legged affair with Victory, who, on the contrary, have sort of, flipped their season around. They've turned things positively. We saw that against the Wanderers, right, in that elimination final, where it just seems as Arthur Dillis has got a lot of things clicking at the right time. They've found form when it matters most, and you've got players like, Daniel Ozani, Mishash, who are really starting to find that form that Victory fans have been craving, right, for the whole season, to bring this into finals, to try and find a bit of inspiration. And, this first leg at home for Victory is going to be super, super important, because if they don't get a result here, which is quite a big possibility, because I think, have they met 2 or 3 times? At least twice, and Auckland haven't lost to them yet. So it's going to be...
Twice, I think,
yeah, I think it was a 0-0 draw, and then 2-0 Auckland at Amy Park. But it's going to be very difficult to see Victory allow this game to get away from them. It's going to be, hard to see them come back in the second leg with a home crowd behind Auckland. And that's why I think it's going to be, a battle of tactics in this first leg. How does Dillis approach it? Does he not commit too many numbers forward in the first 45 minutes? Is he happy with a draw to take back to New Zealand? These are the questions that are going to be, lingering on everyone's mind before kickoff on Saturday. So I think it has to do more with how Victory approach it, because I know Auckland, we know how they're going to go about it, right? They've got this consistent identity about them. Corica knows how, each player is going to perform their roles, whereas Victory have slightly had to alter how they've had to play throughout Spurs this season, right? And it hasn't helped with the coaching change. But, I think Jacob mentioned on the last podcast, Dillis has had to need a bit of time to adjust and find his right formula. And it seems as though he has found that. And that game against the Wanderers proved that they are ready for this type of matchup.
Not to double down on my whole attitude about 2-legged finals, but I think the Victory are a team that we've consistently said have been inconsistent. We kind of don't get really top performances from them for like 4 games in a row, right? Through a month, through what is effectively a final series. And they did have a very strong performance against the Wanderers. And I almost think that they're more likely to perform better in the second leg away at Auckland, because it is such a big occasion, and they're going to be away. They're going to be, 30,000, I think. They're throwing in some more seats for Auckland's home game as well. So that's going to be the big game. And because it's the second leg as well, they're just a team that goes up and down so frequently. I could see them like pulling away with like a 1-1 draw, even a narrow loss, and actually still feeling, Jacob, pretty good actually about going into the second leg, about their chances.
Maybe. I think that anything more than 1 goal deficit that's going to be a tough ask, especially away in Auckland. We've seen many a team try to go over there and get the job done, and very few have come away unscathed. I think Western and was it Perth are the two that or was Perth's in Perth? I can't remember.
Perth won in Perth, yeah.
In Perth. So I think it was just Western then that have really done damage to Auckland away. It's it's not an easy place. I do kind of get what you're saying, where there is a bit of an inconsistency with this Victory side, and it feels like if they have an off day, they'll be fine the next week. But I do think that they're not going to be wanting to head into that second leg with too big of a deficit, because I think what they will then do is that obviously they'll be chasing the game, and Auckland will be perfectly happy to have them in that situation and be able to just pick apart the space that they leave open. So I think that it's a risk that they've got to weigh into account, and I do think that actually I reckon we'll see them come out stronger in this first leg, being at home, knowing that the opportunity to take a lead into a second leg away is going to be massive for the team. They drew away to Auckland the first time these two met, but they didn't score. It was just really a nothing burger of a game, a 0-0, like you said, Christian. So I do think that we'll see Victory come out probably the stronger of the two sides. I think it's going to be a case where if the Victory can stay on top of things for the most part, we saw it against the Wanderers, right, where what their strength was in that game, playing away from home, might I add, was that they just didn't allow the Wanderers to really get into the game. And there were many reasons for that, but most of it was that they retained possession a lot in the final third. They didn't turn the ball over too often, and there was just a sustained pressure. Now, Auckland, we know, defends very, very well. So I think we'll see a lot of these periods of sustained pressure simply because the Victory can't necessarily break Auckland down too easily. But I do think that they're going to need to be able to slow themselves down and understand the situation they're in and look for opportunities and not try and force things too much. Because I think if they go out there and they start to panic and they think, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to try and score early, I think that's where it's going to fall apart for them perhaps. Whereas I think if they just settle into a groove and they go, right, we know Auckland's going to be difficult to break down, our best chance is at home, where we're probably going to have the fans behind us and there's a little bit more familiarity there, but we don't need to do anything too crazy. Just play within ourselves, don't push it too much, because Auckland are a team that are going to punish you if you make mistakes. So I do think they'll come out stronger, but I think that they need to sort of temper themselves a little bit in the way that they do that, so that they don't overextend and leave too much space. But we haven't really seen that too often from Victory, especially in the back half of the season, now that Dillis has sort of found what he's looking for and the team is starting to mesh. So it could be a very tight encounter. And I kind of partially agree with you there, Lockie, that if the Victory can, even a draw, head to Auckland with a draw, there's still a chance of coming out the victors at the end of it.
Christian, we've tasked you with picking up some key players for both of these matchups. Who have you got for this one?
For Victory, I've got Daniel Ozani because of his form since basically the international window, right? Ever since Popovic put him in the spotlight, he's delivered. He's given Victory that extra spark in the final third. And in these types of crunch matches, you'd probably trust Ozani more to take the mantle and take the game by the scruff of the neck, because we saw in that game last week against the Wanderers how he was able to split apart the defence. He was able to just find spaces in behind where other players in the league simply just can't do, right. He's just got that talent where people die for. They crave to possess that sort of talent where you can open a game up in the split second. And for Victory, for how hot and cold they have been for the whole season, it only takes a player of that caliber to really change the dynamic of a game. So for Victory, I've tipped Ozani to have a big one and a really important a figure for that Victory team. For Auckland, I've got Verstraete in the midfield. I think he's one of the unsung heroes of this Auckland team over the season. Probably doesn't get the plaudits he deserves a lot of the time, but I think he really gives this Auckland team an engine and a real driving force, both ends of the pitch, and he's going to be really critical, I think, in sort of that midfield battle as well with Ryan Teague and Valadon in the centre, because we know that pairing for Victory have been obviously really good this season yet again. So I think that's going to be another interesting battle to keep an eye on.
mentioned there as well, Ryan Teague didn't play in that 2-0 defeat to Auckland a couple of weeks ago. So that's going to be a very, very interesting factor. I think also one of the biggest compliments, Jacob, that we can pay Auckland is, and Christian said Verstraeten maybe hasn't got the plaudits he deserved, but can you think of one Auckland player that has really been overly dominant in the conversation around them, right? They've just been known as a very, very complete football team. And when you don't have to rely on certain individuals, like for a Melbourne Victory, having an asset like Daniel Arzani is amazing, because if he is on like last weekend, he will win you games of football. But obviously on the contrary, you know, Auckland, and to be fair, the league as a whole, it's been a big trend this year, but the goals have been shared around, and especially for Auckland, they all have their responsibilities. And when that team is clicking, just as an 11 players on the field, they're always very strong.
And I think that's what they've done so well, is that they've set their floor really high, where you just know that people are going to be able to pick up the slack if somebody's maybe not performing 100%. But yeah, like you said, Lockie, nobody shines. Nobody really stands out. I mean, Guillermo Mai has had a pretty decent season up front. I think Hiroki Sakai has been a very, very solid player as well. I don't think I've seen him put a foot wrong. But yeah, it's more the consistency that's the amazing thing.
You could just go through the list of names, right?
The whole list,
Pinecker, Paulson, Verstraeten, obviously in the middle. Like, there's so many.
Yeah, and I think that's a credit to what they've been able to do, is that, yeah, they know they don't have to do anything crazy to get a result, because they've got a starting 11 and even the depth beyond that, just the whole squad, to be able to get a job done no matter what, without having to, do anything crazy. They just play their football, and they'll get a result. So I think that sort of, we've always been talking about, that's why they've won the league. Is it going to be enough to get the job done in finals against, potentially players like a Daniel Arzani, who they could just have those moments that can completely change a game, and it doesn't matter how well you play as a unit, you can't really contain them, right? And they will just have an impact and shift things in their favour. But no, I do think that Auckland, they're just a tough nut to crack, because of that reason, that if somebody is having an off game, it doesn't matter, because the 10 other players on the pitch aren't, sort of thing, right? They sort of can isolate that a little bit. Whereas some other teams, especially some that have made finals, like Victory, like Western, perhaps a little bit more streaky in that regard, where it's like, if somebody's having a good game, the team can rally around that. But if somebody, one of their key players having a bad game, then it sort of brings the whole level of the squad down a bit. And I don't think that that's necessarily the issue for Auckland. So yeah, it's going to be difficult for the Victory. And I kind of agree with Christian's assessment there, especially with Daniel Arzani. I think that he's going to be the key. And I think that this leg, at least, is going to be really all about the final third for Victory. I think that, they're going to have, like I said, a lot of possession in those areas. It's about how they use that and what they can create from that's going to be key. Because if we sort of see them revert to the Victory of the first half of the season, or even, late last season, where they're putting a lot of balls in the box, Arzani's having a great game, but nobody's on the end of it, it doesn't matter, right? But I think that if they can get things right, like they did against the Wanderers, and they can be really threatening with the opportunities they create, then there's no stopping them.
All right, let's go to Western United and Melbourne City. First of the two games at Amy Park, Friday night, and then Saturday night the following week. There's a couple of little injured clouds. Noah Botic has a slight little quad niggle, Christian, but John Aloisi, he said he'll play. He won't miss that one. But Nathaniel Atkinson and Samuel Suprain for Melbourne City are in doubt as well. So that Melbourne City defensive line that has been so solid, one of the best defences in the league, it looks like they could potentially be breached slightly here in their lineup at least. So a little bit more doubt coming into a City side that, finished the season incredibly strongly when they got a lot of their senior players back from injury.
It's obviously a bit of a concern, but given how the season's played out for City, I wouldn't be too concerned as a fan, because I think Vidmar's done an incredible job with, the adversity he's had to face with the injuries that have piled up throughout. I mean, the more experienced players like the Andrew Nabus and Matthew Leckies, getting injured throughout. A few others as well. Max Caputo obviously missed a few weeks at the start of the season. And who was the player that got injured in the warm-up in the derby? I think it was the first or second derby midfielder. And they had to make a late switch. So they've had so much go against them, but yet they've found ways to pick up points when they weren't expected to. And So I think they're placed really well in this tie. I expect City to go through. I know we'll probably do our predictions later, but I just think this team is more mature and well set up to be able to do the job over two legs against this Western United side who, yes, they have been playing some great football, don't get me wrong, but are they ready? Is this squad ready to compete over two legs against this experienced outfit and such an experienced coach in Vidma? It's a massive question. So, yeah, I think obviously a lot of questions still to play out and be answered over the next couple of weeks, but I'd feel a bit more confident still if I was a City fan, despite the one or two injuries being picked up.
But can the league's best defence stop Noah Botic, Jacob, coming off a hat-trick in the elimination final? Western United, I saw a stat earlier today, first in the league for big chances created as well. So they've been one of the most prolific sides in creating opportunities in front of goal. But as we say, City have been the best at stopping them as well. It's kind of that unstoppable force meets the impenetrable object kind of analogy.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that's where Western have the edge is with their ability to put the ball in the back of the net, and whether it's Noah Botic or any of, I think they've got, was it 2 midfielders on 5 goals each in Bozanovsky and it might be Thurgate. I don't know. This is testing my knowledge now because I didn't. I wasn't sure I was going to make this argument.
Tell you what about Angus Thurgate though. 35 years in the league, first game of finals.
It does look that way for him, doesn't it? But no, I mean that's where Western have that edge, and a lot of it is to do with Botic actually and the movement that he has, and when they play 2 up front as well, that's where that threat comes in. But it's also something that can be exploited, and I think that City, you'd imagine, have the sensibility, that maturity to be able to figure out what they're trying to do there. So typically, at least what we saw against Adelaide and what we've seen a lot this season is have one of them drop deeper, usually leaving Botic to lead the line. But the second striker will drop a little bit deeper and try and draw that centre back out of position, receive the pass, and then not Botic is on a run through in behind completely unmarked, and it's a simple 1-2 through to him. And that's how he scored 2 of his goals against Adelaide in that elimination final. It's how he scored a lot of goals so far this season. So, I think that's where those little nice link-up plays in the half spaces and in that final third, that's where Western really shine. But yeah, they're coming up against a City defence that knows how to shut things down. But I mean, the lack of Samuel Suprain is going to hurt them a little bit because he's obviously a very talented and experienced defender. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. But I do think that City, I kind of agree with Christian, they're sort of my favourites, I suppose, to win this one. I think that they do just have that. There's almost sort of an air of confidence around that squad, that they just seem like the City of old that we saw, that would just walk away with things and it wouldn't really be too difficult for them. They'd put in the hard yards and not complain about it. It sort of seems like the same thing again here, whereas Western, I was sort of touched on them earlier, a little bit more streaky in that regard, where if one of those key players, a Thurgate or a Bozanovsky or a Botic doesn't have a great game, that can really hamper their chances because they're sort of relying on those key figures to take them through the 90 minutes. So no, I think that Western are going to do everything they can to get as many goals as they can early on, I think, because that City defence is one that I think actually gets stronger as the game goes on, and they sort of learn the foibles of the opposition a little bit. Whereas Western, I think that, we saw it against Adelaide, they sort of almost lost their legs a little bit towards the end and let Adelaide back into the game. Whereas, I think with City, if City can just hold them off a little bit and break them down and cause them to use a lot of energy in those early minutes, then it's going to leave them open to attack in the final 10-15. So it's going to be a balancing act for Western, I think, to get through this one.
You wouldn't want to be down going into the away leg, would you?
No.
Tough to come back from that. Christian, no prizes for guessing who your pick for Western United might be, but who are your key players in this matchup?
I'm actually not going to choose the obvious pick for Western United.
Nice.
I'm not going to go down the Noah Botic path. I'm actually going to go Ben Garuccio. I think defensively this is more important for Western United because we've seen, you just have to look back to the Adelaide game. There's leaky holes and mistakes there that City can capitalise on. And I think leadership more than anything, I think Garuccio is going to be important to, be that real figure in the back four. Obviously ex-City player. I think he needs to have a really good game, as do obviously the whole defensive unit and the midfield as well, to help the front line create their chances. So I'm going with Garuccio just to mix it up a bit, because I knew you were going to expect me to say Botic. For City, I think if we get the same version of Tilio as we did again for that Sydney game, I think, very difficult to see them not scoring goals. I mean, not just that game. He's had, I think, a terrific season, all year round, and he just creates so much, out of nothing sometimes. Just that classy play, got a great touch. He's got that feel for the right moment, when to play the right ball, when to take on his man at the right moment. I think, West United can struggle a bit if Tilio's really firing and on form. So we know City's defensive record, obviously best in the league, as you touched on, Lockie, but it doesn't really count for much if the attacking third isn't, producing chances and putting the ball in the back of the net. And I think, Tilio is going to be massive in terms of that.
He's been exceptional since he came back from injury about halfway through the season. He's talked openly about the fact that he wants to be back playing regular football in Europe next season as well. Jacob, what do you make of his potential impact, and maybe just talk a little bit more on Noah Botic as well? I feel like we can't ignore him too much.
It's cliche, but obviously scoring goals is going to be important in this game. Botic just has that quality as he's almost sort of what you'd term, I suppose, a complete forward, in a way that he can lead a line quite happily and find the space and make moves himself. He's a pure finisher. He knows how to put the ball in the back of the net efficiently as well. He's not one that requires a few chances to get his eye in. He's somebody who can, his first chance of the game, put the ball in the back of the net. And he's got really good link-up play with a lot of the players in that Western side. So, obviously they're going to want to look to feed him as much as possible, which is going to be then City's question to answer, right? Is how do we deal with that threat? Because they know if they allocate too many resources to dealing with Noah Botic, what does that open up for the rest of the side, right? And then some key playmakers that could make their difference elsewhere, whether it's like a Riku Danzaki or Matt Grimaldi, right, off the wings, they could have an impact then as well if they're left too open. So that's sort of the big question, and he's key. And then Marco Tilio, like Christian touched on, almost sort of that Daniel Alzani type of player for City, where he's the one that can change the tide of a game. If things sort of feel like they're getting into a stalemate a little bit, all you need to do is give him the ball in a bit of space and let him work his magic, and it's going to open the game up. And I think that's almost sort of a break glass in case of emergency situation for City. I think they'll be looking to have a little bit more of a comprehensive performance than having to rely on Tilio. But I think it's nice to be able to have that in your back pocket. But I think the absolute key in this game is going to be the midfield battle. Western United, we know they like to go man for man in the midfield, and they play typically a 4-4-2, so they're only playing two men in the midfield more often than not. So what that's going to do is it's going to leave a lot of space in behind for players to try and exploit. Now, Adelaide weren't successful in doing that, at least for large periods of the game. But with City, we know that they have a lot of composure in that midfield area. I mean, the likes of Kuhn, right, has come back from his injury. He's playing fantastic football again. He's going to be a key playmaker in this game. So what Western are going to look to do is keep that pressure high up the pitch, and they're going to look to press man for man in the midfield and not let Kuhn have time on the ball, not let him turn and play those passes and be a dangerous player and feed the likes of Tilio further up the pitch. So I think that it's going to be really the battle there that's going to dictate the game, because if Western could keep the pressure on there, it's going to keep the ball further up the pitch for them, and it's going to allow Botic to have, I said he doesn't need many chances, but the more chances you give him, the better. And for City, I think that if they can find even just a momentary lapse of concentration in the Western midfield, and they can find that space in behind, that's where they're going to need to look to capitalise on this one, I think. So I reckon that the key battle is going to be in that midfield, but I think that then, in the final thirds, your Botic and your Tilio are going to be the ones you're going to look to provide the goals and score the goals.
Very good. All right. Little predictions. Who leads after the first leg, both of these games, Christian?
Ooh, tough one. I'm going to go with a draw for victory, Auckland. I don't know what the score is going to be, but I'm just going to say draw. West United, I'd go City with maybe a 1-goal lead heading into the second leg.
Jacob?
Interesting. I'm going to say Auckland take a victory at victory. I think they'll get a goal and it'll be enough to see them out. Maybe Urazani has an off game or something like that, and then that situation you were talking about earlier, Lockie, of victory going away and looking a different team might come into fruition. And then the second one, I'm actually pinging this one for a draw. I think that Western have the quality to be able to put two past City. It's then the case of can they hold on at the other end of the pitch against City, and I'm maybe not quite so sure. I think that this one could be quite end to end and a much more open game than it was against Adelaide, where both sides were turning the ball over a lot and putting the ball out of play a lot. I think this one they're going to have to, especially City, are going to have the composure to keep possession a little bit longer. So yeah, I can envision this one being like a 2-2 draw.
I'm going to say Auckland, get the leg up on Victoria, just a slight downturn, get them prepped and ready to set up a really exciting second leg over in New Zealand. And I'm split down the middle for the other one. I'm going to say draw for Western United and Melbourne City. All right, on Thursday, some other little bit of news. There was a tweet that popped up around midday on Thursday afternoon. Some of you may be aware that A-League Deals X account, they tweet lots of different game promotions trying to get you cheaper tickets into your A-League fixtures. A code popped up getting 50% off tickets for the Western United and City game on the Friday evening. Now, it turns out a bunch of people tried this. It worked, of course, but it also ended up working for the other two games at Amy Park this weekend. So Victory Auckland on Saturday nights and the A-League Women's Grand Final on the Sunday afternoon as well. And the crucial part of this is it occurred after the members pre-sale period, Christian, which was, I think from what I understand, was like a 10% discount, right? So you've got members who were paying a lot more for tickets compared to people who had discovered this 50% code a little bit later in the sale period. Now, as of about 4 p.m., so around about 4 hours later after it was posted on Twitter, that code was disabled. So in terms of the intent around it, we don't know whether it was a mistake that it worked for the other games and maybe it was just a Western code or what the actual intent of the deal was. But number one, Christian, it's a sad indictment that that kind of promotion is running for an A-League finals game. But also number two, there's no way that you can let your members, your core audience that have been supporting these teams, you can't do them like that. You can't make them pay almost full price for a ticket and then suddenly throw around half price ones a couple of days later.
For sure. It's like, taking away incentive to be a member, right? I mean, you're seeing other people get it for half price, 50% even more. It's sort of, it's a bit of a joke. But it's funny because my dad was actually asking, for ticket prices to potentially get a couple of tickets to head over to the game against Auckland on Saturday. And I said to him, like, don't worry, because tickets shouldn't be that cheap, because they should be trying to allow as many fans into the stadium as possible for both these fixtures, right? They should be cheap, right? I actually haven't gone in and checked the exact prices yet, but I mean, they shouldn't be too much, right? Because as we know, right, I think you said last week there was a 3% overall increase in the crowds this season. Yes, it's positive, but for these finals games, especially City and West United, right? I'm a bit worried as to the turnout there, especially for the designated home game for Western. But I mean, this is where the promotion and the marketing side of things has to really kick in. Yes, we want to try and make it, as accessible and cheap as possible to attract as many fans as possible. But at the same time, you can't dilute the product at the same time.
$40 for your cheapest ticket, kind of in the corners, and then you're looking at 60 for kind of on the main wings. Jacob, is that? I don't want to go too much into ticket prices because there's so many different factors at play there, but specifically the idea that your hard paying members and the ones who are getting involved early in supporting the clubs are the one being kind of shafted a little bit. That's not right.
No, I think the approach works when there's the demand for tickets in a case of, like a perhaps a smaller team having made it to this stage, and you're then giving those members the advantage of being a member is you get priority ticketing, so you get the first chance to secure your seat. You know it's going to be a sellout, so you want to be the first in to be able to get your spots. That's where this kind of thing can work. And then any seats that are left over at the end, guess what, you stuck around, you're lucky there's seats left, here's 50% off sort of thing. That's a situation where it can work, where we know there's the demand. But as Christian touched on, it doesn't look like the crowds are going to be all that big anyway. The demand isn't necessarily there for this sort of a thing to happen. And you do feel like you just let your members down, because all of a sudden, they're paying more than anybody else is for the tickets. And for what benefit? They got in first, but it's not going to be a sellout anyway. So their seat was never at risk of being taken in the first place. It's a bit of a strange one. I've seen people complain about the clubs for it, and I think it's just worth reiterating that finals are an APL thing. And so as far as I'm aware, ticketing and ticket prices are all set by the APL for these games. So the fact that people are aiming at the clubs is a little bit misguided, but I do think that it's not a great look. And I'm of the belief that this was a mistake. Just the way that it was gone about, like nobody had heard about it until it was sort of tweeted out that, hey, hang on, this code works for these games as well, leads me to believe that something wasn't put in properly on the back end, and it just opened up that code for all games this weekend, and it would explain why they cancelled it pretty quickly as well. But it's a big mistake to make, and it's not a good look.
No, for sure. I think look, overall, it's unfortunate that, as you say, the allure of finals has dropped so much that the benefit of being a member and getting those first access tickets just doesn't exist anymore, because you're going to be able to walk up on the day. They're going to sell out in Auckland, obviously, for the second leg and for the grand final if they make it. Does Amy Park sell out unless Melbourne Victory go on to then play in a grand final? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it'll sell out on Saturday night. I'd probably think maybe not. So look, I know the three of us in here believe that the A-League can return to that point, and hopefully you do at home as well. But until then, this is where we are. But the other football happening this week was the Australia Cup playoffs. Perth Glory and the Wellington Phoenix are into the round of 32 in a few months' time, beating out the Mariners and the Roar respectively, who all finally now get to go on holiday. I'm sure as the clock ticked over into extra time on that first game on Tuesday, some of those players were thinking that maybe this season was just never going to end. It was just kept going. But, a cool comeback from Perth. Christian, Ollie Sale, I think it was cool to see him be a little bit of a hero. He's been a bit of a slog for Perth this season. He's had a tough year. So saving the penalty and a few other good saves to get the comeback was good as well. And Wellington was saved by a missed penalty from the Raw. Alex Rufer gets sent off. It's all a little bit of chaos up in Darwin, but I don't really know what to say too much more about these games. I feel like both teams, all four teams kind of just want it to be over, and now it is. And Glory and Phoenix are through, I guess.
And I don't know what to say either, because I didn't watch these two games, to be perfectly honest with you. It's good that Perth were able to somehow salvage their season. Good comeback from 2-0 down against a Mariners side who, as well, obviously been very underwhelming compared to last season. And at the end of the day, that's why these four teams are in it, right? Because they've had, very poor seasons. They've been placed in this scenario. But the best you can do in terms of those four coaches is, try and experiment a bit. Look ahead to next season if those coaches actually will stay in charge beyond, a couple of questions there with a couple of teams. But, overall, you want to see at least some excitement and entertainment, right? And I thought I did manage to catch the highlights of Perth and the Mariners. Like, at least it offers that bit of something, right? It's not, sort of boring games where you're just flooding on all the teenagers and the young kids. And I thought it was quite competitive, actually. Adam Tackett getting on the score sheet, which is good to see, with the Socceroos, again, right around the corner with World Cup qualifying. So, I'm not a huge fan of this, of these playoffs being put into this time slot, but is what it is.
Is what it is, Jacob. The Mariners almost had another little reprieve right at the end. A little bit of, honestly, I thought it was a soft penalty decision. I don't think that's ever been a handball this season. I thought we got rid of those, but ball don't lie. Good save from Ollie Sale, and it looked like it was going to penalties, but not to be.
And I think the nation breathed a collective sigh of relief when it was not going to go on any longer than that. I was excited for these games. I will admit I didn't end up actually watching as much of them as I would have liked. But, I think that it's cool to have these playoffs because it's, as I've said, I think the Australia Cup is an important part of pre-season for these teams. So missing out on it is, a huge detriment because you're not going to necessarily have the chance to play against really high-end opposition as you do in the Australia Cup. But yeah, these games, I think it was a case of everybody was glad it was over, players, coaches, fans alike. It was a little bit of a non-spectacle. It's strange having them at this point in the season because it kind of feels like a lot of the players maybe know they won't necessarily be back, and they're kind of maybe not really playing for anything. Whereas, was it last year? They were later on in the off season, and we saw then with like Perth were playing in it again last year. Zrilic comes in and we see, we get to see the first of this new coach and this new identity for a team and their first steps. Whereas now it sort of feels like the last steps for a team, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a strange one. How do you weigh it up? I'm not quite sure what the perfect solution is, but yeah, it did feel like kind of a little bit of a non-event this year. The people in Darwin didn't think so though. Decent turnout for both games, I believe just under 2,000 for both of them, which considering these teams, couldn't really be much further from Darwin with Wellington and Perth. It's good to see that there's support for the game just right across the country, regardless of who's playing. I think that's pretty awesome. And I do kind of like the idea of having to go up to Darwin as almost some sort of punishment. That's not a slight against Darwin itself, but I can't imagine it's the most pleasurable place to go when you think you're about to head to an off-season holiday.
Yeah, look, the cup is what it is, right? I like the fact that for the first time, of course, the fact that Wellington have won means the Phoenix and Auckland FC will both be in the round of 32 draw. So we could get a New Zealand derby. I'm still not sure definitively if they've said where that would be played, because obviously both of those teams, if they're drawn against any Australian team, have to play the game away. But the asterisk is there, except they're drawn against each other, but they haven't said if that's necessarily in New Zealand or not. So interesting. I'm hoping for that eventuality. I think that'd be fun. Let's go into some transfer news, and we've got one that is literally hot off the press as we're recording this. The Western Sydney Wanderers have confirmed that Nicholas Milanovic will leave the club for a club record transfer fee to join Scottish side Aberdeen. Christian, this has been in the works for a while, but is now officially confirmed by the club. I think good for Milanovic. He's obviously earning the club a little bit of money as well, and he gets the next step in his career.
Yeah, not a surprise at all. It's a fully deserved move. Given the 12, 24 months he's had, he's been exceptional, really carried this Western Sydney side on his shoulders at times, and he finally gets this, well-warranted move to the Scottish League, where we were debating a bit, which is the right league for him and other Australians to go and develop and take that next step. But obviously it's Aberdeen that he's going to be, playing for next season. So, all the best to him. Obviously, I'm reading now it's a record transfer fee for the Wanderers, which is obviously great money coming in for the club. And best for both parties. Milanovic gets his move abroad for his career aspirations, and the Wanderers can use that money to really strengthen their squad and potentially maybe be able to sign a couple of players or even maybe 3 or 4 to really diverge the whole squad. Defenders, midfielders, attackers, they'll sit down and assess which is the right path to go. But really exciting news.
You're being very optimistic with what they can get out of 800,000.
800,000.
Change the defenders, the midfielders, and the attackers. But no, you're right. It's good for the club. The other person signing on the dotted line is on the other side of Sydney, Jacob Ufuk-Talay. We know a little bit more about his new deal at Sydney FC. It is a 1-year guaranteed plus a 1-year option on the club side. They did the CEO, Mark Aubrey, came out, did a full 5.5 minute, presentation to the public is what it felt like about the expedited review of their season. They made a few little classifying points that the whole season probably wasn't entirely in Talay's control. And I think the point of Hayden Matthews and his sale in January is definitely a fair one, they already had thin defensive stocks and, the injury to Alex Grant after he arrived as well. The sale of Matthews exposed those stocks even further, right? Which I think is reasonable. But I'm still of the firm opinion that for this club to not make finals, it's almost as if, we understand that they kind of set making finals to be the target, a little while ago when Talay came out and said that they'd agreed terms. Obviously, he didn't do that, but for the marker to already be that low for what this Sydney FC squad was is a disappointment in itself.
Yeah, I'm surprised Sydney wasn't burnt to the ground after this news became official with the way that some people have reacted to it. Not the most popular decision, let's put it that way. I do appreciate the transparency behind it, and like you said, that sort of mini presentation that was given about things, you can appreciate that as a fan of any football club, of them at least being open and honest a little bit about what's going on and why they've come to that decision. But I think that he's going to find himself on the hot seat from the get-go next season, because if he can't produce results quickly, we could see, like we did see with Corica last season, where it just took a couple of poor results and an absolute thumping, and then bye-bye, off you go. We don't want you here anymore, So it's a difficult spot. I think it's the point you hit on at the end is the point that I think is most poignant, that you look at Sydney's squad and you go, there is no way in which this is a team that should be missing finals. Like, I don't care, what happens during the season. There's so much talent in this squad. And we saw it with the run that they were able to put on in Asia. And we were always saying, why can they not seemingly convert this form to the league? Is it going to come back to bite them? And it did, because, they couldn't get consistent results together and they missed out on finals. I do think had they have made finals, maybe there'd be a different narrative around this decision, and fans would be perhaps more of the opinion that, okay, well, let's see how he does in finals, it's all to play for sort of thing, and at least he's kind of met a bare minimum standard of success for this club. But it's how the mighty have fallen for Sydney. It's not something that we expect to see. Like, when City have an off season, they're finishing, 6th or 5th or 4th, right? They're still making finals, but they're maybe not dominating the league as they have done recently. But for Sydney, it's like, geez, okay, they've not had an off season clearly for a long, long time, because we're seeing now what can happen when they're not putting things together on the pitch, and it's not a pretty thing for them. I do like Talay. The times I've spoken to him in press conferences and after press conferences and stuff, he's a really nice guy, and he knows his football, but I think that he's sort of run himself into a dangerous position where I think perhaps his lack of an ability to step back and take a more holistic view of what's going on maybe has come back to hurt him a little bit. We've spoken about similarities to Ange throughout the season, where it's like he's got his style of football and that's what he wants to play. It's kind of the same thing with Talay, where he's like, I want to play this really aggressive attacking football, and then you're just leaving yourself vulnerable defensively, and there's not a lot you can do. So I think it's going to be an off season of contemplation for him, and yes, of course, replacing the likes of Hayden Matthews is going to be at the top of that. I think I've already seen them linked with Nathan Paul at this point in time, which would at least be a start. There's a lot of work to do for this team, and I think perhaps maybe a reevaluation of the style of football they want to play, because it's clear it didn't work this season.
For sure, I think recruitment in that defensive area is very key as well. I don't hate Christian that they gave him another year and just the 1 year to be guaranteed on his contract. However, I think very similar to what Steve Corica was at the beginning of last season, he'll be on thin ice. And if that next season doesn't start too well, then I think he could be seen going out the door pretty quickly.
It's obviously going to depend on a lot of things, right? First being, he has to make finals. Another disastrous season, it goes without saying. He's definitely going to be shown the door, right? Because in Asia as well, there was a big chance there to win a trophy, and fell short again. So a lot of things obviously went against them with such a talented and a deep squad. Very disappointing for the fans who were, could be argued quite rightly, were frustrated when the news broke that Tally was staying on. They thought the best for the club was to move in a different direction, get a new coach and go from there, because essentially they probably don't think he deserves another season. But yeah, this Tally's got that now. He's got a chance to, look back and say, okay, obviously didn't have the best season, but he can now start to review a couple of things and maybe change things differently. And I think I've said this on the pod before. I think he's the type of coach who won't be as stubborn as maybe other coaches, right? He'll look at it and think, okay, I can change things here and there. He'll really do a deep analysis and try and obviously improve, because if he does the same thing as he has this season, from a tactical standpoint and other things, then it's just going to end up probably the same result. So I think a big lesson as well is they can't keep relying on their star players to pull them out of tough situations. This needs to be a really a team collective. Look at Melbourne City. They don't necessarily have all the star-studded names, but as a team, as a collective, they really put in a shift, right? Lockie's raised his eyebrows to say,
I think they have a few stars. You're like
I'm talking about
this morning in his presser that forgot that Matt Leckie existed.
I'm talking about a Douglas Costas type marquee,
sure.
One of those.
Or a Segacic, right? How many times did he save them this season?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
It's a difficult one.
Yeah. Yeah, true. That's all I've got to say.
All good. I think finally, a little bit more rumour. This is all soft stuff, but pretty exciting in your neck of the woods, Jacob. Craig Goodwin, the quote is imminent. His return per Marco Monteverde to Adelaide United. His 2-year deal is up in Saudi Arabia. We know he left Adelaide United under not the best of circumstances, but a lot of things have changed in terms of the running of the football club. And obviously that's his hometown. That's where he loves playing his football the most. And it seems as if they stand a pretty good chance of getting him back.
Yeah, to the point that 10 News Adelaide has just reported that it's all but a done deal, that he'll be back next season. So yeah, very exciting to have the two good wins. I can only imagine that's going to be an incredibly prolific partnership. Clip that, because that'll probably age terribly, and they'll both be injured for the whole season and have no contribution whatsoever. But no, getting Craig Goodwin back is always he's just one of those players you want to watch play. And I think for Adelaide as well, everybody in Adelaide loves Craig Goodwin, and he loves the city. He represents the city well, and I think it's going to be getting back a little bit of that leadership, that experience, and that confidence that maybe has been lacking the last couple of years. They've done a decent job with the likes of bringing Stefan Walk back, keeping around the likes of Isaias, Ryan Kitto, Javi Lopez. But I think what Craig Goodwin does is he's one of those players that wears his heart on his sleeve, and can be that player that can pick a team up when they're down and really lift their performance as a whole. So yeah, it's really exciting to see that he's back. He's only 33 years old, so there's still a few years left in him, I'm sure. And his style of play has never been, heavily reliant on, being super quick or anything like that. It's his technique and his ability to strike a football that's been, his defining quality over the last few seasons. So, I suppose all the Adelaide fans are hoping that he's got another 3 or 4 years in him of high level football. But it's everybody's going, what is it now, like the 4th or 5th time he's left Adelaide and come back. I think it's the 4th, but the 5th if you count the fact that he had the loan move that then turned into a permanent deal, if you count that as two separate returns. So yeah, it happens a lot, but I think he's done he's done well for himself. Obviously, he's gone over, got the payday in Saudi Arabia. Now he's able to come back home to the club that he loves, and play hopefully some really good football. I think the case is he's already been spotted in South Australia, which isn't much of a surprise. I think everybody here is hopeful that he will return, because that left wing, was one of the few spots in Adelaide's side last season that wasn't locked down by anybody. But him returning, he'd have it on lockdown, and you've got then most of your squad set, and you're just looking to improve on what you already had. So yeah, it's an exciting prospect, and everyone seems to think that it's basically a done deal. So I guess time will tell, but it certainly seems likely that he'll be back.
Very exciting. I think this must have been one of the very first episodes of this show. Was when we were talking about Goodwin's exit, and I think all of a sudden we were saying he'll be back. He'll be back.
Yeah.
Give him his 2 years. He'll run it out, and then he'll be back in Adelaide United colours. And it's good to see that seems like that is happening. In terms of some other transfer rumours, that seems now to be pretty much done, which is cool. But another actual rumours, plenty going on in Sydney. Joe Lolly is apparently getting a fair bit of interest from around the league. He's no certainty to stay in the Sky Blues. Neither is Anthony Caceres, who has reportedly rejected a first contract offer from Sydney FC, according to Monteverde again. So MacArthur, the Bulls are in the hunt for him. Mile Stojovski spoke exclusively to Paletti for Ramble Australia. And we got that little nugget there. So they obviously value him. They can't comment too much, obviously, but the contract situation for Marin Jakalic is progressing well as well. He is expected to sign on at the club, but not Jake Holman, who we understand is looking to players trade in Europe for next season. Juan Mata also was doing a little bit of press, Christian, during the week, and he kind of gave all the usual answers about he is considering his future, but it seems like a possibility he could stay in Australia and maybe even the Wanderers. We understand that he's been offered a 1-year extension as well by Western Sydney, but still plenty to play out this off-season.
Yeah, in terms of the Mata situation, I mean, from a Wanderers point of view, is it worth keeping him on? Because Stajic, I think, found the right formula without him, and he was able to win games of football. I mean, do you really need that distraction behind the scenes? I'm not too sure. Yes, it adds value in terms of, bringing new fans and, the high-profile name. Obviously, any club would want that, but in terms of on the pitch and results, I don't think he's a necessity. To be perfectly honest with you, wouldn't it be funny as well? Joe Lolly makes a switch to the Wanderers. Wouldn't that be something?
Jeez, after the whole, I don't think so. That could happen.
I can't see it either. I'm just throwing it out there. It'd be funny. It'd be so funny.
After the whole Milos Ninkovic thing, oh my God, that'd be crazy. All right, that'll do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Jacob Stevens, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Lockie.
Christian, bring in the 7-team final series.
Cheers, Lockie. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, after this season, we can dissect the new series format for finals, which will please you a bit more, so we don't have to have these arguments.
But then we'll have 2 years of a new format before Lockie goes, why we don't need a 7-team finals series.
No, we're going to make it 8 after that. Yeah. Just no 2-leggers and get the top teams playing in the first week of finals. That's all I ask for you, APL. But that will do. Thank you all very much for listening at home. We appreciate your company. We'll be back on Tuesday to review the first half of the A-League men's semi-finals. We'll see you then. Thank you again for listening. Goodbye.